Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
You are not at your normal location.
I got little outdoor getaway, little beach time for the weekend. But nevertheless, the work beckons, the public demands our insights, our understanding of the world around us. So I cannot take a break.
Yes, the DMZ army demands it, and you've snuck out from the house in the wee hours to put things in perspective. And so let's start with this, Bill. Congress left town, and I think they're gone till September. Is that right?
The Senate might not have taken their recess yet. Forgive me if I missed something yesterday.
The
Because Trump
House,
won't.
though. The House.
Or the House, I believe, is gone now. At least Speaker Johnson shut down the prospect of floor votes, and I know Trump wants the Senate to stick around and go through nominations, including judges. I don't think that's settled yet.
So, but is this the House leaving at this adjourning for summer August recess, whatever we want to call it? Is it earlier than normal, and is this to stop something from happening in regards to the Epstein
right.
files?
I mean, they had a schedule. They all generally take August recess, but they had a schedule that they were going to stick around through the end of this week. And there were specific bills that they wanted to pass on immigration, on the environment. And Democrats were they're these bills go to the Rules Committee. That's sort of the step before going to the floor. And Democrats on the Rules Committee were trying to tack on amendments to force disclosure of Epstein case documents. Instead of having Republicans forced to take these votes, Speaker Johnson said, "Nah, forget it. Let's just call it a day. Go home." And I think Democrats deserve some credit for that. There's always been this teeth grinding all year. Like, when are they going to fight harder? When are they going to do something? And a lot of that didn't take into account that they have very limited powers as a minority party. They can't really stop. You can't really stop legislation in the House for the most part. Then you have filibuster powers, but you can circumvent that with reconciliation, as just happened. And the stuff Trump does by executive power, Congress can't unilaterally block without majority votes for things, and so that leaves it to the judiciary. So you have to sort of align reality with expectations as far as determining, are they fighting as hard and as smart as they can. Here was a case where they detected a disruption in the force. There was division within the Republican Party over Epstein, and Democrats said, we're just going to hammer it. And it made Speaker Johnson so uncomfortable. Speaker Johnson could have said, look, guys, just suck it up. Just vote against these things. You get poison pill amendments all the time. Just suck it up. Say, look, I'm just not voting for Democratic amendments, whatever they are. Yeah, they're going to run stuff in the midterm and ads. They always do that, but we just got to lock arms to get this done. He wasn't willing to do that. He said, let's just go home, forget about these parts of the president's agenda, and we'll see if this dies down by the fall, and we'll revisit it then. And maybe it's just a temporary delay, and it will still pass. But one thing you can try to do as the minority party is run out the clock. Grind, throw up obstructions, waste days. At some point, the session is over and you run out of runway. So I give Democrats credit for successfully executing that strategy this week.
Now, sometimes during these recesses, they'll have the town hall meetings and there'll be backlash from the public over, we've seen it happen, during the Tea Party movement and all of that. Is there any sense that there could be pushback back home in the districts about the Epstein files?
Well, let's see if they have town hall meetings. We've already had episodes earlier in the year where even Republican congresspeople, even in reddish places, would get a lot of heat at the town halls. And you might say, well, look, this is just like the local indivisible chapter that meets at the Unitarian Church. It's not really representative of my entire district. But they came, they showed up, they made noise, they got on the news, and it got Republicans say, maybe let's skip the town halls. Let's not interact with our constituents because it's gonna be messy. So we'll see if they do that, this time around, or if they're gonna say, what, it might even be worse this time around, because it's not just gonna be folks hitting us from the left. We're going to get folks from the right over Epstein, and we usually don't want that kind of media coverage.
I think we're into week 3 of the Epstein scandal, which is in and of itself remarkable. And we've had a lot of these conversations already. We've remarked about how it's remarkable that Trump has been unable to change the subject despite trying. We've remarked about how this it feels for the first time like he's a lame duck. And then there have been some developments, including, I guess, the DOJ is going to try to talk to Ghislaine, whatever her name is, Maxwell. Bill, do you have any sense of how or if this ends, or when this, when the subject actually is changed?
I mean, we might have talked about this in the past show, but when you're dealing with conspiracy theorists, you can't end it. And no matter what documents you provide, Barack Obama can give you the long form birth certificate, and conspiracy theorists will still find ways to poke holes in it. So it's a sucker's game, a game that Trump knows very well.
To that point, I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw a clip of I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but it's a right wing influencer who's criticizing, Candace Owens has been saying that that Macron's wife is a man. And this other influencer was saying, like, well, we've got a birth announcement from her birth in the newspaper. We've got pictures of her, growing up as a little girl. We've got all the evidence possible, but once someone has a conspiracy theory, then everything that you produce to disprove them is evidence that this goes even higher than they thought.
And I think there's always been fringe characters, but there was a time when, even some diehard conservatives would say, we don't need these John Birchers. This is too much. Mm-hmm. We got to find a way to marginalize these folks. There was a scene in one of the Reagan biographies I read where Jesse Helms was coming in, bringing up some, crazy stuff about Sandra Day O'Connor, and Reagan told him, that this is all nonsense. Forget about it. There was some sense that if you're going to govern, you have to keep the people who are the most unhinged to the fringes. The entire MAGA movement is predicated on giving oxygen to conspiracy theories, drawing those people out, validating it, saying, I'm going to be, we're going to go after the deep state. I'm going to release the files on JFK. I'm going to release the files on MLK. I'm going to release the files on 9/11. We'll get to the bottom of all these things. And that's a true Pandora's box kind of situation, because you've now activated a large swath of people who you will never satisfy. You will never commit when you get to the point where it's too much for you to take, because
do you think? Okay, but to your point, then, do you think if Trump had released the files, but of course you have to redact certain things, you have to.
Right, exactly.
That even if he had done that would not have been enough, that he had painted himself in a corner.
Exactly. Who are you redacting? Who are you covering? Who are you protecting? Is it you? Is it Bill Clinton? Or is it some other donor of yours? You'll never be able to answer it. And now we already have indication that Trump's name is in there. And even if it is in an innocuous way, how do you prove it? You can't.
Okay, but now it makes sense now that if he puts anything out, it will never be enough, right? Because But my question is, if he had just put it out initially, instead of going through this last 3 weeks where he has stirred up his base, if he had put it out initially, he's their hero, he puts it out, would that have been enough, or would they have turned on him anyway?
Yeah, I think the game is lost before it began. Everyone was already hyped to the nth degree before Election Day for years, largely because of the stuff that Trump said himself in 2015. That there was massive smoking guns being hidden. So how do you tamp that down on day one of your presidency? I don't see how it's possible. You won the election in part because they believe you're going to uncover this stuff.
So how do you way he could have assuaged or appeased them is by delivering someone. There had to be a sacrificial lamb, somebody on a silver platter,
maybe,
that's like,
or that person be treated as a heat shield to protect somebody else. I mean, if they thought, look, people thought they were going to take down big name Democrats. That's what people in the MAGA movement thought was going to happen. So if he delivered up Bill Clinton on a silver platter, then perhaps that would have been sufficient. But obviously, it wasn't that simple.
One of the most important political maxims is under promise, overachieve. But Trump has always defied this. He's done the opposite. He's hyped things. Mm-hmm. He's defied political wisdom. Could it be that it finally caught up to him? It took 10 years. It took a decade.
I wouldn't say finally. He did not get reelected. Let's remember this. He lost the House in 2018. He lost the White House and Senate in 2020 because he overpromised and underdelivered. So he's always had a hard time once the dog catches the car because he's not good at delivering.
But when it comes to his base, which is really all he cares about, whether that's wise or not, he could promise them the moon. He said he was going to build the wall. He didn't build a wall, and they didn't care. So he got away. When it comes to his base, he always got away with over promising and under
Yes,
delivering
I agree with that.
to them. And this seems like the first time that he got caught.
And he has always operated on the premise of, never apologize, never slink away, always maintain, outsized confidence and bravado and machismo, and whatever ups and downs occur, so what? You're going to live another day and you'll be able to press on. I mean, it's true in his business life and in his political life. And he asserted from the get-go in 2015 that he had this cultish bond, that he could shoot somebody and people wouldn't leave him. And he has largely proven that over the years as far as the base is concerned. But I think, and I'm sure he thought, he can say whatever, even though he knows he was tied to Epstein. And I'm not saying he committed a crime. I don't know that, but we know he has ties. He know he has ties. He thought he could still play this game and get away with it because his base would never leave. And I think what we're learning is conspiracy theories are so intrinsic to holding this coalition together that this is the one thing where that logic doesn't apply.
All right, we're having a little bit of connectivity issues, and I know you're on vacay, so we'll keep it tight. So let's go to another. Let's have one more topic to appease the great demand that there is for our commentary. What else are you monitoring?
Well, I'm looking at so we're in end of July. End of the federal fiscal year is September 30th. You have to pass legislation in regards to discretionary spending, the spending that Congress has discretion over, to keep government agencies afloat. And we're very used to there being dramas around this time, threats of shutdown, stopgap legislation. We're certainly going to have that again at minimum. But because Republicans just passed this rescissions package where they said, we got through fiscal year 2025 through a series of stopgap bills. If you recall, in March, Schumer famously, fell on the sword and said, okay, we're not going to throw a wrench in this one. We're going to let it go through, not have a filibuster, and essentially accept a bipartisan agreement to maintain these spending levels. And so that passes Congress with a supermajority oververting a filibuster. There's a quirk in the law that allows for agreed upon spending to be rescinded by presidential request if you get a simple majority of Congress to support. That type of measure is not subject to filibuster. And so that passed on a party line vote last week, which clawed back money for foreign aid and public broadcasting. Not a huge amount of money in the big scheme of things, but it did acutely affect those two areas. And Democrats rightly say, wait a second, we had a deal. We had a deal that we voted on, and you exploited this loophole to go back on that deal without our support. Why should I engage in another deal with you on spending levels? And I know this is not a one-off because your budget director is actively talking about coming back with another rescissions package, saying that he doesn't even necessarily need Congress to support it, saying that the appropriations process should be less bipartisan. So I wrote in the Washington Monthly earlier this week, I think the logical step for Democrats to take is to say, you want a partisan appropriations process? You got it. See ya. We are not negotiating this package anymore. And I don't think that could it lead to a shutdown? Sure, but why would Democrats be blamed for that? Because the Republicans are on record saying, we don't want you. We don't want your help in determining how much the government spends. Well, don't the rules say that you need 60 to overcome a filibuster? Like, these Republicans wouldn't change the rules if they really wanted to. I mean, these are not people who are that enamored with norms and precedents. Look, I'm a guy who, in the Biden years, said Biden should be bipartisan. And other Democrats said to me, you can't trust these guys. They won't meet Biden halfway. They would get rid of the filibuster in a heartbeat. So they don't care if they fight to the hilt. And so what Democrats just push the nuclear option and just do it themselves. And I was proven right. Mitch McConnell did help on infrastructure, on chips, on a gun safety measure, on postal service reform. So So I don't come at this in a knee-jerk way and making a lazy assumption about Republicans, but we have seen what's going on the last 6 months. We've already seen Donald Trump push the envelope on a whole host of areas. If it's really, again, they're the ones saying they want it to be less bipartisan. So if that's how you want it, the only way to get it is to change that rule and essentially eliminate the filibuster, if not totally, for this very large area of legislating. And if they don't want to do that, then you can come back and say, hey, we're sorry, we were mean, we'll work with you again, and we'll put something in the bill so it can't be rescinded anymore. They got options. Democrats can say, I think truthfully, if Republicans want to keep the government open, they can, either the easy way or the hard way, they can do it. But it's not on us because they said they don't want us.
Bill, before I let you go, in the last week, we have lost Chuck Mangione, Theo Huxtable, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, Hulk Hogan, the Hawkster, and Ozzy Osbourne. So it's been really tough, and I would say for 1980s era.
It's a tough Gen X week.
Celebs. Which of these names means the most to you or is the most important?
Well, I think Malcolm-Jamal Warner. I mean, I think that character, obviously he's more than just Theo Huxtable, yes. But you talk about what was the most impactful part of his legacy, and I know it obviously ties into Bill Cosby, which is obviously a very fraught subject, but there's no denying the Cosby Show had massive impact on race relations, racial equality, racial stereotyping, or the diminishing of racial stereotyping. Theo Huxtable was a three-dimensional character in a show full of three-dimensional characters that really woke a lot of people up into how into how the Black community is just as much of a rich, complex community as any other community. So you can't. If you go back and look at Best of Theo Huxtable, you're going to see things that have cultural, sociological import more than anyone else that you mentioned there.
Yeah, I haven't gotten here yet in terms of having a coherent take on this, but I do feel like, man, Hogan is super important just in terms of like mainstreaming professional wrestling. Maybe Vince McMahon gets there without Hogan, but he's really the face of the WWF, WWE for at least a 5-year span. And of course, it's a Reagan era thing, all American. His theme song, I am the real American, or I'm the all American, or something like that. He's got the flag, taking the vitamins, saying the prayers, taking the steroids, whatever. It's very 80s. And then Ozzy, you got the whole heavy metal satanic panic, but then it's also an American story. I don't look, if it's not for Cher and Osbourne, I think Ozzy is like a footnote. Maybe you don't hear from him after he goes solo or whatever. And I think Sharon made him, and then reinventing himself as a reality star really made him an indelible part of the culture. So I think there's an American story in all of these guys. And then, Chuck Mangione, not a big fan of the music, but hey, King of the Hill, coming back August 4th on Hulu, everybody. Tune in. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, both Ozzy and Hulk are different results of 60s backlash.
Yes.
Black Sabbath was a way to not follow the trend on flower power and tap into a different sort of teenage angst and rebellion. Hulk is a sort of a personification of, like you said, of 1980s culture, jingoism, schismo, religiosity, all, but in a package.
Flashiness also. Yeah. And he wins the title by beating the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, right.
So,
and his nemesis were billed as Iranian and Russian, even though I don't think either one was either. But 80s wrestling was big on those types of binary stereotypes. As much as Malcolm-Jamal Warner was exploding stereotypes, pro wrestling was heavily perpetuating stereotypes. That was really the bread and butter of 1980s professional wrestling. And Hulk was seen as, essentially, an Aryan hero, but a bit unusual in that he was long-haired, because the heels in wrestling tend to have long hair. And so it was a bit of a precursor.
Long hair on the sides, not so much on top.
Yeah. Right. But so a bit of a precursor to how conservatism was going to become less buttoned down. It was still going to be heavily Christian and uber moral, but in a rougher package. So you can sort of draw a very long line between the Hulk Hogan and Donald Trump in that respect.
And Hogan spoke at the Republican convention this past summer, a year ago. So, okay, I think we have your next column, Bill. When do you need to file?
I need to file Monday. I might go back in the well on discretionary spending, if you don't mind.
All right. Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll put up a short of the. I think
it's more of a Matt Lewis column really than a Bill Scher column.
We fleshed it out. You're the brains in the operation. All right, buddy. Always a pleasure. Enjoy an undisclosed location at some very glamorous beach property where you are, and hopefully we'll see you next week in the DMZ.
All right. Take care.